welcome to the show. It's a real pleasure to meet you properly.
Nice to meet you, man.
Let's start off with I've been thinking about how to intro you and do your bio and all that kind of stuff, and I'll do that after the show. But how do you define what you do?
Yeah, that's a great question. Happy to be on here. Thanks for having me. Um, I'll often ask my clients and people I work with, like, hey, if you wouldn't mind, like, telling me what you think I do, that'd be great, because I really don't know. It changes and flows so frequently. But by profession, I'm a physical therapist, so doctor of physical therapy, licensed in the state of California. I'm based in San Diego, and that's been my profession for the last 5 years. And really, my entry point to mind body performance work. And from there, over the last 5 years, I've taken a few deep dives into pain science, chronic pain, psychophysiological pain and disorders. So pains and you think about phantom limb pain and how an injury or a limb hurts and that limb doesn't even exist. Also psychophysiological pain, like low back pain without any tissue damage that's prevalent, and how that impacts people's lives. So deep dove into pain science and was fascinated by that. And then soon after, discovered men's group work, men's group and emotional based connection work, talking to dudes in a circle saying, yo, I feel upset, I feel happy, I feel, and like, and recognizing that there was a huge gap between where I was and where I observed other men and mentors of mine speaking so openly about what's going on and creating this like vulnerable space, but really strength in vulnerability. And so I was like, okay, these emotional pieces are real and they are in the body. That's what an emotion is. It's an energy in the body, a way that we react to a certain scenario. And then all of a sudden I'm like, oh, fuck, emotions and how emotions work in the body and how emotions can cause tension and tightness and anxiety and stress in the body directly connects with the pain science and psychophysiology that I'm looking at and deep diving into. Fuck yeah, that's a good blend. So I started bringing in the emotional health piece to my work with patients, really just asking them how they felt rather than saying, hey, let's do these exercises, and talking about how pain is in the brain and all those different nomenclatures on pain science. But then as soon as I started inviting feelings into my sessions and giving space for someone to feel sad as they're recognizing that their knee isn't performing in the way that they expect their knee to perform, as soon as I gave space for them to have this like release, maybe all of a sudden I was like, hey, it's okay to cry in session. That makes sense that you're crying because of this emotional pain that's building on top of that. And as soon as I started doing that, I started seeing really cool results of injury outcomes and strengthening. And all of a sudden, my patients were working with a little bit more clarity, and they weren't obstructed by these repressed feelings and emotions. And so now, and then I added breath work and I started doing breath work. So that's a huge piece too. But now what I do and how I would define it is it's psychophysiological practices or mind body practices to allow you to understand yourself in a better way so you can perform better and you can clear energetic blocks so you can show up more in tune with the world. But I could define what I do and what I do in 20 different ways. Every time I explain it, it will be a little bit different, but the really core basis is that of connecting with yourself, understanding, improving your awareness of self, and then making shifts to change your behavior so you can show up better in the world.
Yeah, there's so much that I want to dive into there, that you kind of got about 5 or 6 jumping off points that I want to touch on. One of them is kind of moving a bit more into what is psychophysiology, like what's happening there. It's kind of, it seems like it's been on the fringe for a while to discuss or to to think that our mind affects our body and our body affects our mind. It's kind of like this ongoing transfer. But what is it? How do you see it?
Yeah. I love how you pose that question, is how do you see it? Because to answer what it is one thing, but how I see it is another. And how I see it is, our mind works independently of itself. Our cognitive system works independently to our body, which works independent to our cardiovascular system is its own thing, and our respiratory system is our own thing, and our nervous system is its own thing. But none of these exist without connecting to the other. So every piece of our being has its own constituent parts, but the interlinking between everything is what really is the most important piece of who we are and how we perform and how we show up. So psychophysiology is, you look at the autonomy of the brain and the thinking mind, and then you look at the autonomy of the body and the thinking mind, and then you see how they communicate, but they also miscommunicate. And in between those two communications, your thinking mind, your consciousness is that piece that can influence, hey, are they being pesky brother and sister and nagging at each other and they're on the wrong page? Or are they working together and understanding each other? And as soon as your mind and your body understand where each other is at, and you, the individual, being able to see both sides of the picture, can be the mediator to say, hey, yeah, it makes sense that you're thinking really fast. And guess what? Your heart rate's going really fast too. So how can we like blend that together? So if that's how I see it, is mind, body, and or psychophysiology practices is the way that you can mend things together so that they can work together rather than in opposition. And then at that point, you're in stress. You're in a negative stress, not a positive stress to create growth. You're in a negative stress.
So where do emotions come into this? Like, obviously we've got that kind of transfer of information that we just spoke about, the consciousness being the kind of, I like the phrase you use, the mediator between those two realms. Yeah. Where do emotions come into this?
Yeah, so emotional system is its own system. And I work with people. I'll do a check-in process, just have them check in with their physical body. Hey, what are you feeling? So a body scan, tightness, chest, core, stomach, quenching in my stomach, my throat's tight. I get that like body feedback, and then I ask, how do you feel in your emotional body? Because the emotional body it's a system in itself. So emotions are ever present in ourselves, in our beings. If you feel like you're not really feeling an emotion at the moment, you're likely not tuned into the emotions that are present in that moment, because they are ever present. And usually when we have emotions, and what are emotions? Anger, sadness, joy, grief, guilt, shame, love, joy, and any variation of any of those exist, and often they exist all together in this intertangled web of you-ness. And so how do emotions play into that? Because emotions exist in our body always, our body and our emotional body will always have some kind of response to that. And so often you'll feel like a tension in your shoulder, and maybe you did a nice set of upper trap shrugs 2 days prior. And so you can associate that tension in your shoulder there, but at the same time, maybe you're holding on to a stress or an emotional stress in that same shoulder. So to associate, say, hey, I feel this way because blank, I think that's very, it's reductionist. It's like, hey, I feel this because of this. When emotions are ever present in the body, I think acknowledging that something that I'm feeling in my body may have a contribution from the emotions that I'm feeling, that's empowering, because it's like, oh, it makes sense that I feel the way I feel because I might have an emotion that's present. So it affects our emotions, affect our body, and that's how it would influence how we show up, to answer that question.
Oh, sweet. And then I suppose from there, like I want to explore the kind of awareness of emotions, because I know, speaking from my own personal point of view, it's taken me the best part of 30 years to start working and go, okay, like I am feeling X, whereas I spent a lot of time kind of shutting it out. So how I'm sure it kind of depends on which clients you've got and who you're working with, but how are you drawing awareness to emotional states?
Yeah, I want to educate that first and invite that in. Um, just really, it has to start with education for me, and that awareness piece. Like, what is an emotion? I think um, the term emotion really varies for most people, even though it is the same, but our awareness and understanding of what that means is different. So I want to make sure that I'm on the same page whenever I say the word emotion as the person I'm working with. So like step one is saying like, hey, what do you know about emotions? What do you feel like? What does that mean? And then adding in my own understanding and nomenclature and linguistic on emotion, saying, okay, so how I see emotions and what I've learned from the work I've done in emotions is that emotions are different states that exist in our body, and they come from um, how we react to certain external stimulus. And so um, I usually introduce it in that way, and then always lead by example and share vulnerably what I'm feeling like in this moment right now. And I link in the body because body and emotions go so close together. But in this moment right now, I feel like my upper chest, like pecs, are tight and clenched, and underneath that is a nervousness, a a slight fear, and I also feel in that strength in my chest, that tightness. It's not just tightness; it's kind of strength. I'm sitting up tall, and I feel proud to be here. I feel excited to be talking about this. I feel like purposeful in this moment, and so me acknowledging what I'm feeling in the body and then the underlying feelings helps me get more grounded and rooted in communicating with you. And then so I'll share that, and maybe I'll say, hey, my stomach hurts, and there's some uneasiness in my stomach, or I feel frustration in my hands. So me modeling that first creates safety to be seen and felt and heard, and really like it just changes my relationship with that person who I'm working with so quickly, because there's a sense of like, okay, cool, there's raw authenticity. They're like, fuck yeah, dude, I feel that in my chest too. They're like, it's like, wow, like you say tingling in your feet, like my feet are feeling tingly, squirming too, right? So there's this opportunity of relatability, and that's what we do as humans, is we relate with each other, verbally with words, and emotionally with energies and emotions between, hey, like I feel tight, hey, me too, right? So there's this other language that we can speak to each other with, and that with that, it's like nonverbal communication, man. I'm like, hey, I see that you're taking some deep breaths. I'm acknowledging where you're at, and it's like, wow, you're reading my body. I'm acknowledging the nonverbal communication style. And I've done 2 years of psychotherapy training, and psychodynamic training, and in that I really learned and started to learn to appreciate the value of what's called the unconscious therapeutic alliance. That is the unconscious connection and alliance that I can create with my client and or patient, um, which means that they feel comfortable and safe with me to open up. And that's important. So naturally, unconscious therapeutic alliance comes on board whenever I say, hey, I'm feeling this. And then there's like, oh, fuck, okay, cool, me too. This is a real human I'm talking to, not just a person with a sheet and a notepad trying to go through a list of physical, mechanical items. It's really like, oh shit, dude, this guy's like listening to me and hearing and being real. So
I suppose whilst you're going through your own checklist as well, what's happening is that they're inevitably drawn to awareness of their own, like whatever area you're talking about. Like there's no way they're not going to think about what their chest feels like. There's no way they're not going to think about their feet. There's like, it's forced and it's subtle at the same time, which is super clever. For those people without the resource of you, where would you say is a good place to start with this? Like if they're bringing awareness to this, how do people start?
Yeah, I don't know of anyone who doesn't have access to me, so hit me up. I'm an open book. I want to share this information with people, and where to start. I think there's a ton of modalities and information and podcasts talking about emotions and emotional health, and as I'm learning myself more about these modalities and ways to communicate, I'm noticing that it seems that the overarching society of health and wellness is starting to take to the importance of emotional health and mental health. Absolutely. And so I think that any point is a good starting point. There's a ton of stuff coming up and out, a lot of apps, a lot of podcasts, a lot of books. Huberman's great. I think there's a lot of like somatic experiencing type stuff. So hard to answer that question because I think there are so many entry points. So the best place to start is taking that step and moving towards wanting to figure and learn a little bit more about yourself.
When did you begin to see the value of breath work, and how does that link into our mutual friend Casper and seeing and spending that time in Iceland?
Yeah, absolutely. So breath work became something that was on my radar and something I practiced in 2016. I heard the Wim Hof podcast on Joe Rogan, the first episode that they had together. And as soon as I heard that like crazy Dutch dude speaking with so much excitement and exuberance for the world and life, and like I was like, dude, what the hell is this guy on? Like, what is he talking about? But it was so real and authentic, and I was really drawn and interested. And I practiced the breathwork pattern with him on the podcast and had a felt sensation of like benefit from it. And then I looked up some YouTube videos, and from that day forward, I've been practicing daily. My practice has changed significantly in the last like year and a half because I've added a lot of like embodiment practices and maybe some Kundalini techniques that I find valuable for myself, and maybe some holotropic twists. And so my practice is really different than just like the Wim Hof method. But back then I was in physiotherapy school, and before going to school every morning, and I went to school in Boston, so it's very cold in the winters, and every morning before class I turned on my bathtub, cold as it can get, filled it up, so it's like 42 degrees, and so I think that'd be like 15.
Do some quick Googling.
Do some Googling for that. But I would fill my bathtub up with cold tap water, which was cold enough to not want to get in there. But I would do 3, 4, 5 rounds of Wim Hof, get in the cold, get out, freaking shoot lasers and lightning out of my fingers as I'm moving, and my heart's pumping and everything's like turned on, and I'm tapping into that feeling and experience that I saw Wim Hof speak from. And I'm like, yo, this shit's good. And I'd go to class and I'm sitting up tall, front row, ready to learn. And I've never been a good student. And all of a sudden I'm being a good student, and my ADHD wasn't kicking in as much. And I wasn't taking my Adderall every day like I usually do. And I was just like, this is freaking amazing. And then my classmates are drinking their coffee, falling asleep. And I'm like, dude, I'm on to something freaking good. And I was really, that's where I dove in big time, deep. And so since then, started practicing on my own. And really it was, I wanted other people to do it with me, but no one would no one would do it with me.
No one's crazy enough to jump
I'm
in.
like, yo, like, let's try it. And like, I'd get groups together and they do it once and be like, okay, cool, that was a good experience, but it wasn't like a lifestyle for them. And so I really didn't understand that, but that wasn't for me to understand. So I was like, hey, this works for me. I moved to San Diego to start working as a physio. And in San Diego, one of my draws to this area is it's a very like holistic health forward space, a lot of physical activity, a lot of woo-woo activity. I didn't know that there was as much woo-woo until I got here and I started looking around. I was like, oh shit, there's some woo-woo stuff going on. And I loved it. And I found a group of Wim Hofers here and I started connecting with them. Reese Peluso is one of them, and he introduced me to Casper Vandermeulen and was like, hey, we're doing an Iceland week-long retreat, like Wim Hof, like it's for mostly like Wim Hof practitioners. At that time I wasn't, and so I was like, okay, cool, I'm gonna go check this out. Went to Iceland in February of 2019, and did as deep of a dive as you can do in a breath work and ice and cold and nature. And that just shifted things like significantly for me. Probably more on like a spiritual level as well. And in addition to the psychophysiological level. So,
How so did it shift on a spiritual level?
yeah, um, man, well, one, Casper was the leader, and I think he
Yeah.
oozed spirituality. But the space and the setting and the humans that were there and the conversations that were had uh, weren't directly talking about God or Jesus or spirituality, but the underlying like essence of like connection that was being made had a very like comforting and enlightening type feeling sensation. So for me personally, I link spirituality to nature deeply, and I find a lot of connection personally in nature on that spiritual realm. And winter in Iceland, I'd go outside in the middle of the night and just sit and just observe the deep, deep stillness and like watch stars and just really I got this newfound appreciation for nature amongst community in that space. And at the same time too, we saw Aurora Borealis, and it's like
That's enough.
this shit's wild. This shit's great. So yeah, and again, just some really deep conversations I had with people on that trip, and openings into my own like psychology and pains and things. So yes.
Yeah, I suppose the thing, like, and by the way, 42 Fahrenheit, it's like 5.5 degrees centigrade. So like 5 degrees off freezing, right? So yeah, the kind of the thing that we're kind of speaking around, but we haven't touched on in detail, is how cold and breath are linked. Like, why do they go hand in hand with each other?
Yeah. Because both are nervous system practices, both are psychophysiological practices. And how I look at it is when I'm breathing in a certain way that triggers my nervous system, like breathe fast and heavy, hyperventilate, what you're doing is you're going to obviously shift your respiratory system, your cardiovascular system is going to respond, but then your thinking mind will start to go, your ego will like start to pop up, and your nervous system will start to get triggered. And so in breath work, I use breath work as an opportunity for me to be the mediator between what's going on and how I speak, and bring in intentionality. Like, why I'm doing this for my heart. I'm doing this for my lung capacity. I'm doing this to clear stress. I'm doing this to create neuroplasticity in my emotional brain center. I'm doing this to deactivate my frontal cortex, although it might be uncomfortable not thinking so much all the time. So I'm using breath work as a stimulator of my body. And as I'm doing it, I'm saying, okay, got you, I got you. We're working together to do that. I get into ice. Ice is a stimulator, maybe the most extreme of all and the most difficult. But again, it's a practice where I align how I'm reacting to the cold and how my mind is reacting to that scenario, and I link in some rooted optimism that's rooted in truth, right? Because I could be like, everything's great and we're fine and everything, I'm optimistic, but that ain't like, that's not true. What is truth anyway? But like in that moment, I'm trying to align everything into the fact that, like, yes, I'm cold and yes, my body's starting to shiver, but the shivering makes sense. I'm in a cold bath, and at the same time, I'm not under threat. I have a warm shower right outside. I have a timer. I'm with some friends. So there's me like communicating to myself these little stable pieces of safety so that I feel more calm. And then that is very much similar to breath work, how I communicate and use a stimulate. And in the same sense, exercises in the same vein. You're running. Why am I running? What's going on? Reacting. I like to use running as a psychophysiological practice. Hey, I'm doing this for me. And as soon as I start to like activate and talk to myself in a positive way as I'm doing it, I'm finding that I'm buying in more, and then my body's responding better, and then my recovery time's a little bit shorter, and the way that I'm moving and feeling is a little better. So ice and breath work, I think, relate more because they're kind of on an extreme, and then at the same time you're using and communicating in the same way. So I like the combination. But I go into ice so many times without doing any breath work, and I do so much breath work without even adding ice at all. And so they don't have to be married, but they do marry very well together.
Yeah, because of that nervous system regulation piece that they're regulating that. Nice.
Nervous system, yeah, for sure. Nervous system regulation.
What are the fundamentals that we need to know about breath? Like, I'm sure that there's some things that it's like, okay, this is kind of the starting point that we need to build from.
Yeah. Few fundamentals. So Brian McKenzie is one of my mentors and good buddies. He's the man. And I worked with him in mentorship for a year last year, and I really gained so much from that dynamic. But one thing I really love about his teachings is that he pushes principles over methods. So many methods are out there, but they're all using the same principles. So what are the principles of breath work? What's the foundation of breath? One of the principles that he finds to be really valuable, and I agree, is nasal breathing being optimal to mouth breathing, given that you have nasal sinuses and different benefits that you get from nasal breathing on a regular basis versus mouth breathing. So we can talk about that, or you can look into that. But like I said, so much research supporting nasal breathing and its effect on the whole being.
Can you go into that? Like, I think there's two types of people that will be listening to this. One of them will be thinking about it. It's probably a blend, but one side will be thinking about how does this benefit me physiologically, and the other part will be how does this benefit me kind of in that mental emotional landscape. And I suppose it's a blend of all of that. But like, where does that lead to?
Yeah. So when we're talking about breath and nervous system regulation, Nervous system 101, super quick. Rest and digest is parasympathetic. Fight or flight is sympathetic. So you get activated, you're ready for action, and you go into your sympathetic nervous system, meaning that your heart rate starts to beat faster. Adrenaline is released. Your mind, it starts to get more like hyper focused to be aware of a scenario in case you need to escape. So it's a natural response. Parasympathetic, I think of it like a parachute. Parasympathetic slows us down, it calms us. And in the parasympathetic restful state, that's where your breathing is slow naturally. That's where your heart rate is slow. That's where your nervous system is not on high alert, and you can be in a restful state, which is ideal to be in a parasympathetic calm state for the majority of your day, like 90% of your day, with little short bursts of action, sympathetic activation, and then come right back down. So often people are a little bit in this chronic stressful state of sympathetic, and then they're like always on high alert, which is damaging to the body. It causes increase in inflammation in the body, and it causes damages of the telomeres at the end of your DNA strands, and so that heightened stress over a prolonged period of time, chronic stress, chronic sympathetic activation isn't the most ideal state to be in on a normal day-to-day basis. We can link in mouth breathing, unrestricted, not filtered through our sinuses, a little bigger, a little faster. Maybe it raises our shoulders and we do shoulder breathing more than diaphragmatic, but we can link, and it's been linked. Mouth breathing activates sympathetic nervous system. Nasal breathing deactivates sympathetic or drops you down into parasympathetic. So nasal breathing being beneficial over mouth breathing for many reasons, but one of the most important is whenever you're breathing through your nose in a slow, calm way, there's a lot of positive correlations to your thinking mind neurology saying, I am safe. And when you're safe, you don't have to be stressed. So if you're stressed and you want to calm down, shift to nasal breathing as a way to influence the system. It's not a fix-all, so you're not going to be stressed, having a panic attack. Okay. And then you're like, fuck, it didn't work. It's like, it's not a fixer, but it's a way to help influence. And if you have that awareness that if I breathe through my nose in a slow way, I can calm down, that's beneficial. Sleep tape is popular. You put tape over your mouth at night so you can breathe through your nose at night, and it'll improve quality of your sleep. I love sleep tape, and I love sleep taping whenever I'm working at my computer, or if I'm journaling or I'm reading. I'll often find that habitually I'll start breathing through my mouth, which isn't terrible, but I want to be as efficient as I can. And sometimes when I'm breathing through my mouth, I notice I get distractible. So I'll do a little thing of tape over my mouth while I'm reading emails. I got like a 45-minute block of time where I need to focus, and I'll use tape on my mouth to encourage and force, but encourage nasal breathing so that I can be more efficient in my work, because nasal breathing is more efficient by research and studies that are coming out showing efficiency. And so nasal breathing is something that I highly support and advocate for.
So we've got this kind of nasal breathing for calm, focus, slow, and wide, I suppose, a wide aperture of focus, like receiving information. And then we have the sympathetic mouth breathing for kind of a narrow aperture, like there's only one thing to think about, there's stress, there's kind of work hard. How does that correlate to, or are there other ways that we can dictate our mental state through modulating our breath?
Yeah. So One way is through choosing which vessel we breathe through, nose or mouth, and then pacing is important. How fast are you breathing? Depth is important. How deep is your breath? Um, how many breaths do I link together? So duration of breathing, a combination of all of the above. Am I nasal breathing fast and quick and over 20 minutes time? Am I mouth breathing really deep, long, slow into my diaphragm stomach? That's going to influence the mental state. And so this is where I think that breath work becomes a very personal, let me self-explore practice. Brian McKenzie says N equals one. You are the one subject of your own study of yourself. So what happens whenever I mouth breathe super, super, super fast and then hold, and there's another piece, holding breath at the top, holding breath at the bottom. Those are going to influence mental states and processing. And so how you blend those all together, I think of Steph Curry as a basketball player or Shaun White as a snowboarder. These guys practice their three-point shot hundreds of times over and over and over. Block training is doing the same thing over, repetition. Good. Now a new movement, over, repetition. You get good at those 7 different blocks, and then all of a sudden you can do one move and transition it into another move, and then you pull back into another. And then I think about jujitsu, and then you're like, there's no time for you to do the same thing over and over because you're wrestling someone who's going to be doing something different. So you're always moving, reacting. And that's almost how I breathe now and do breath work now, is like I'll mix in like a fast, like nasal breathing, and then I slow it down. And then I'll do maybe some like Kundalini exhale puffs. And then I sit and feel and notice how my body reacted to a culmination of different techniques. And so you can nasal breathe a certain way and do a block of nasal slow breathing, and that's going to affect you one way. You can do fast Wim Hof style breathing, and that's going to affect you in another way. And I love that those affect, and I feel like I've found that I really like how my body responds whenever I mix and match 3 things quickly together, because then that elicits a different layer. Because I've done Wim Hof so many times, and I kind of feel and know what I get. And I get holotropic, and I know what I get out of that. And I do like the ego eradicator, breath of fire, and I know what I get, but I don't know what will happen to me whenever I mix 4 of those in a new way that I've never mixed before. And as I do that, I'm like, oh, fuck yeah. And then all of a sudden I'm like, okay, I'm expanding my nervous system regulation capacity to handle different scenarios, because a lot of times I did breath so I could handle my day-to-day life situations with more ease and less like freak out. And the thing is, if I'm doing Wim Hof and I learn how to like less freak out with Wim Hof, and then all of a sudden I'm walking down the road and an old lady cuts me off, I'm like, what the fuck? It's like I should be able to react to that. So I like to surprise myself with different practices to set myself up to have a greater capacity to explore. So I jumped down a little rabbit hole, but that's
still good.
what I'm up to right now, man.
it really got me thinking, because I suppose if you sit in meditation, you like typically you just sit and you watch the mind, and in that you're only offering your mind a very narrow slice of consciousness at one time, because you're going in with one state and you're kind of focused on, okay, this is the way I feel right now. These are the kind of thoughts that are going to be pervasive in this moment because of the external environment or my internal environment. But it's this narrow slice of the potential range of experience. But if you're intentionally modulating your state, you're going to become more aware of those big swings, those different kind of high indications, high increases in obviousness, I suppose, of your mental state. So at that point, you're kind of you're teaching yourself to go, oh, okay, this is what this state feels like. This is what this state feels like. I can see now that these relationship between the thoughts, emotions, physical sensation, behaviors, like wanting to do, urges, like motivations, like you can see all this, and you're doing that because, or you can see it more clearly because of the modulation of your breath.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's because your modulation of breath, but really deeper than the modulation of the breath, it's you recognizing that one thing doesn't indicate what's happening to me. Breath is the influence. How I'm feeling inside my body is an influence. This thing, how I slept last night, is an influence. And bringing in my work in pain and working with chronic pain and stressful pain, I so frequently work with people who are like, I feel hurt and pain because of this. And there's such a strong correlation in their mind that this one thing is the reason that I'm hurting. And if I solve this, then the pain will go away. So they go on this journey, sometimes many years, of pursuing this reason why they're feeling this way and trying to solve that one answer. But that journey is complicated because they'll never get to it because they're looking at their pain as a one source outcome. And what I say is, why am I in pain is a very complex question. There are so many reasons why. So to answer it with a single simple answer, that doesn't add up. So to say, hey, why am I in pain? Because so many things have contributed to this pain and contribute to this pain. And all of a sudden, I just stumbled across this. But as I started to work with patients in this way, I saw their stress go down. They're like, oh, I'm not in pain because of that. I'm in pain because of that, and 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 that. Okay. For some reason that calms people down. It's almost like they don't have to fix it. They can accept that the experience comes from a lot of things, and that acceptance piece is so pivotal for shifting how you approach the way you're feeling. So as soon as you accept that, you're like, oh, I got to change a few things in my life. Not just that one thing, like, oh, I'm in some rough relationships that aren't empowering me. My job isn't like this. Oh, these things are going on. Okay, cool. So then all of a sudden there's this multifaceted shift. And how I'm linking to what you were just saying is using breath in so many different ways allows you to open and expand your mind into the like meaning behind different reactions, So yes.
Yeah, the example that comes to mind is that of bulging discs. Like, it's a ridiculous amount of the population who, upon analysis, actually have bulging discs, but a small percentage that say, oh, I've got back pain. But the source of their back pain is almost always indicated to be, oh, you've got bulging discs. But it's like that correlation doesn't make sense. And I've got a friend who's doing some research onto this, working on a PhD around this area at the moment. So that's like, it's fascinating to see that, to see that there's that link there. So I suppose my question is, what is pain?
What is pain? I think pain is well, the International Society of Pain, or Committee of Pain, defines pain as a negative physical and or emotional experience in the body. And so that's like by definition. And I like the experience piece because for me, it's hard to answer what is pain. I think whenever people say, hey, I have pain, what they're really saying is, hey, I'm having a pain experience. So when I'm talking to patients, I always say pain experience. Hey, your pain experience, because pain exists in so many ways, but how you experience the pain is, I think, more important. What is pain? It exists. Pain is just a part of life. Pain is a thing that will will be forever present. I see it kind of in the same vein as love. What is love? Love is something that I have towards someone. No, I don't think so. Love is something that just exists in the world, and it is there. It is present, and we can tap into it and appreciate the presence-ness of love. Pain is the same way. Pain is in the world. It exists. And how we communicate and how we receive it is based on our own personal experience. So the pain experience is so individualized, and it is so multifaceted, and it is so complex, and it is something that is really difficult to answer with a single definition.
What do we know about the physical process of pain and how it works?
Yeah. So pain, as we understand it and how it works in the body, is also up for debate. Descartes, the philosopher from, I think, like 200 BCE, but early philosopher of human body and thinking, Descartes said that when you touch something, he found that when you touch something that hurts, there is a pain pathway that goes from finger touching painful point through your arm, through your body, up to your brain, and it targets and it elicits a brain pain response. And there, all of a sudden, that's how pain works. You poke something that hurts, and it moves through a neural connection, and boom, you receive the information of pain in your brain, and that's what pain is. And that was believed to be true, and there is truth to it, but it was believed to be the only truth of pain for hundreds of years. And then comes in a new stage of human awareness of brain neurology, and you find that there are different parts of the brain, and then there's a prefrontal cortex and the emotional center, and then all of a sudden we look deeper into the nervous system and the peripheral nerves, and how there are different fibers in the nerves that can send signals of temperature and pressure and pain. And now all of a sudden Descartes' theory of, oh, you poke and it hurts and line goes to brain, that's pain, started to expand into what's called like the neocortex theory, which I like. And the neocortex theory means that you poke something that hurts and it goes into a brain system, the neocortex, that is influenced by memories, by trauma. It's influenced by what parts of your body is activated, how much water you've been drinking, the efficiency of your endocrine system, the efficiency of your biochemistry, so that poking something that hurts can go to your brain. But how you perceive it is really, really determined by what state you are in, psychologically and or physiologically or neurochemistry, chemically. So that theory is basically like, okay, pain's fucking complex because you touch something that hurts. I touched this really fucking hot thing of coffee. Ow, pain, hurts. But then I re-examine the coffee mug and it's actually cold. It wasn't hot, but I had a perception of it being hot. And I remember that time that I was 3 years old and I touched something and it was hot and I hurt and burned my finger, and those memories come in and they influence that experience that I just had. And then in addition to that, my mom yelled at me, and then I felt like she didn't love me. And then all of a sudden something else happened. And so this, me feeling pain, is not at all a direct indicator of what I experience in my somatic and my sensory input system. So pain and how it works in the body is like this, there's this neocortex piece that complicates what that is. And then you add in what's called the biopsychosocial piece. Biopsychosocial means biological, psychological, and social contributions of pain. And then all of a sudden, it's not just what's happening in my head. The social pieces: what is your income like? What is your community relationship? What is how what's going on in the world, and in the collective consciousness? Like, so there's so many layers. And I think as we learn more about pain, we learn that we really don't know. we can't even touch what the complexity of it is and how it works.
Yeah. Yeah. Gabor Mate's work is massive for me in understanding that. And like, I'm still on the fence with some of his points, but like the data seems so overwhelming that the broad theory behind it seems absolutely like outstandingly correct. And I think that I'm going to butcher the details of the study, but he always gives details, and people can look it up on YouTube if they want to, of a study of breast cancer survivors, and if they had someone that they could speak to about the experience, and they were going through a difficult time in life, they were less likely to develop breast cancer than if they had just one of those pieces. Like if they just had someone speak to, but no difficult experiences, like there's a correlation between a physiological response and also kind of the social environment that you find yourself in, or the biopsychosocial environment you find yourself in.
Absolutely. Yeah. So I think that's a huge piece, and something that I didn't really acknowledge to be a contributing factor until I learned about it. And then, so
it's mind-blowing. I'm interested by what you learned from Brian McKenzie.
Yeah. Well, that's a profound amount of information that I learned.
Yeah, please download a year's worth of mentorship into 5 minutes.
Sure. Well, I think what started as a breath work mentorship really developed into a mutual like relationship and friendship. And I think what I learned in the breath work piece portion of it, like say the first half of the year was a lot of like breath learnings, and then the second half was that deeper social piece, a little more connection. And that second piece, that's where I really got pushed and pressed by him and encouraged by him, but challenged, and like, oh, is that really what you want? Oh, is that what you think? Like, are you sure you think what you think you think? And it's just like he's great at mind fuckery in a very positive, beautiful way. And at the same time, I think his mere presence put my body into a state of nervous stress that was what I was looking for, as far as like challenging myself to like show up. And sometimes he wouldn't even say a word, and I'd be like, oh shit, what the hell is going so
yeah, there's something about him. He has that presence, doesn't he? Like I've interviewed him a few times, and kind of there's, even through like a Zoom call, there's something about him that has a different presence to most humans.
Oh yeah, it's great. And like I want it in my life, and that's why I really was like drawn to it. And I love the evolution of I'd call it the evolution of my mentorship with him. Is really, I was like, oh cool, like what a grounded human with positive and real and unobstructed truths, and someone who's just like really he doesn't give a shit for my like whininess or anything that's like holding. He just sees me in my highest and really holds me to that with a nice presence. So very true. And then on the front end of my work with him, we did a ton of like breath tables, oxygen tables, CO2 tables, breath holds, perception of breath and time, if I would hold my breath for X amount of time, and then time it versus not time, how does that shift my perception of everything? So his work was really fascinating on both layers of breath specific and just mental connection specific.
There's a couple of questions I like to ask everyone to kind of wrap things up. And the first is one that I've very obviously stolen from Tim Ferriss, but I think it's a great question. What books have you gifted most?
Yeah. This is one I gifted Brian recently. It's called The Tao of Physics, like based on like the Tao Te Ching. It's by Fritjof Capra, 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 and he's like a 1980s atomic physicist, and it's a blend of anatomic physics, or atomic physics and Eastern mysticism, which is like fucking money for me. I'm like, hell yeah, let me like learn more about the underlying subatomic particles and vibrations of the world, and how what we see as spirituality, and how all the teachings of spirituality around the Eastern world really line up together, and it makes sense that they line up together based on what we're learning about vibrations of particles, and everything is everything, and there is no separation, and there is no pieces like basic building blocks. It's just energy. So that book is one that I read recently. I fucking love it, and I've been throwing it around like candy. So hey, shoot me your address, and I'll be sending it your way too, gifting it.
Oh, mate, that sounds great. I love that. What habits do you perform for your own mental health and performance?
All of them. I do it every day. And what is it that I do? I walk around throughout my whole day connected to the importance of my mental health and well-being. So I have habits. I have a very beautiful morning ritual routine. I wake up before the sunrise. I take in the light from the sunrise, and if there is no sun because of clouds, I have some nice sun lamps. So I like to bring in light from that physiological piece. Coffee, a lot of coffee is a very spiritual practice of mine. And so I put a lot of emphasis connecting myself to nature in the mornings with sunrise, at night with sunset. So I'm very like circadian rhythm aligned, and at the same time I have these like strong structures of time for myself in the morning and the evening. But during the day, it's almost like I have this like internal mental post-it note that says like breathe. This internal post-it note that I'm always walking around looking and observing, feeling. It says like, be the best motherfucker you can be today. This post-it note, another post-it note in my mind says like, how are you feeling? Like, how can you communicate? How can you share love? Like, so much of my habits, I don't want them to be just habits that I do to check the box. I really have found a lot of value in this like walking, being meditation type state, and always holding that. And then at the same time, I give myself grace and be like, okay, fuck it. I just want to watch some sports and chill. But that's important to me, and a way that I think I view that is I have blocks of habits and ritual, but at the same time, I feel like I'm always connected to that deeper purpose of why I'm doing some things and these things. So yes.
Sweet. All of it then. Really all of it. Every moment.
Fucking as many moments as I can have. Yeah.
So finally, where can people find out more about you? Where can they follow your work?
Yeah, absolutely. So my personal brand is True Self Health. You can find me. My website is www.trueself.health. And so you can find all the information on me and my links to communicate with me. If you have any questions, you can jump on a call. Happy to drop in and hold space for people and see if you want to work together. And then on Instagram, that's probably primary place to find me and my information. And it's the same tag, True Self Health. That's all one word on Instagram. And yeah, I mentioned Andrew Huberman earlier in the podcast. Love him. I love his mission, and his mission is really creating a direct to consumer free flow of information on health and wellness. And I see myself really aligning with that, just channeling as much as I can to people, unobstructed thoughts, just saying what's going on. So you can either sign up for my 6-week course, that's $7,000, or you can just go to my Instagram and get all the same information and follow and just absorb what I'm saying. And yeah, I actually don't have that 6-week course, $7,000. Joking.
You should do. Yeah, it's on. Your Instagram is great. I really enjoy it, and
Yeah.
you've put some beautiful work up there as well, like really beautiful. Like your post on journaling was really cool. I really enjoyed like looking through that, and like the detail in there was super cool.
Fuck yeah, dude. I was journaling on that exact prompt this morning, and it's like I feel joy hearing that you appreciated that. That's huge, and that's why I put stuff out, is to have that effect and impact. So thank you, man. I appreciate that.
Thank you so much for joining me.
Thank you for having me, man.